The following words are intended to provide a gentle path toward rest while sharing quiet observations about the human mind. Tonight is for stillness. As you listen to these psychological truths, there is nothing for you to do and nowhere for you to be. Everything is slow. Everything is calm. Did you know that the human brain can process certain images in as little as 13 milliseconds, a speed so fast it happens well before a conscious thought can even begin to form? We are now entering a space of quiet learning where the facts are soft and the pacing is even. Welcome to this period of rest. You are safe here in this moment of transition between wakefulness and sleep. The mind is a vast landscape of quiet processes and gentle rhythms that continue even when we are not paying them any attention. There is a deep comfort in knowing that your mind knows how to take care of you. We will move through these reflections slowly, one by one, allowing each thought to drift by like a cloud in a night sky. There is no rush to understand and no pressure to remember. The following words are intended to provide a gentle path toward rest while sharing quiet observations about the human mind. Tonight is for stillness. As you listen to these psychological truths, there is nothing for you to do and nowhere for you to be. Everything is slow. Everything is calm. Did you know that the human brain can process certain images in as little as 13 milliseconds, a speed so fast it happens well before a conscious thought can even begin to form? We are now entering a space of quiet learning where the facts are soft and the pacing is even. Welcome to this period of rest. You are safe here in this moment of transition between wakefulness and sleep. The mind is a vast landscape of quiet processes and gentle rhythms that continue even when we are not paying them any attention. There is a deep comfort in knowing that your mind knows how to take care of you. We will move through these reflections slowly, one by one, allowing each thought to drift by like a cloud in a night sky. There is no rush to understand and no pressure to remember. The phenomenon of state-dependent memory suggests that we are more likely to remember information if we are in the same physical or emotional state as when we first learned it. This means that a calm mind is often better at retrieving calm thoughts. When the body settles into a state of deep relaxation, the brain shifts its focus from external demands to internal maintenance. This shift is natural and necessary. It is the way the mind organizes the events of the day into the long-term storage of memory. Psychologists have observed that the human brain has a natural preference for patterns and symmetry. This is why looking at a calm ocean or a repetitive forest can feel so inherently soothing. The brain does not have to work hard to interpret these scenes. It recognizes the rhythm and the balance, and this recognition allows the nervous system to lower its guard. When we see something predictable, our brain releases a small amount of dopamine, not the kind that creates excitement, but the kind that creates a sense of peaceful satisfaction. The concept of neuroplasticity tells us that the brain is constantly changing and reshaping itself throughout our entire lives. Every quiet moment of reflection and every period of deep rest contributes to this process. It is a slow and silent architectural project that never stops. Even as you drift towards sleep, your neurons are forming subtle connections that strengthen your sense of self and your understanding of the world. This process requires no effort from you. It happens in the background, as steady as your breathing. In the study of social psychology, the pratfall effect describes how people who are perceived as competent become even more likable when they make a small mistake. It is a reminder that perfection is not a requirement for connection. Human beings are drawn to the gentle flaws and the quiet humanness of others. This realization can allow a person to let go of the day's pressures. There is no need to be perfect in the quiet of the night. Research into the psychology of color has shown that soft blues and muted greens can actually lower a person's heart rate and blood pressure. These colors are often associated with the sky and the natural world, environments that have provided safety and resources for humans for thousands of years. Even imagining these colors can have a measurable impact on the body's level of cortisol. The mind is a powerful tool for regulation, and it responds to the mere suggestion of tranquility. The Zeigarnik effect is the psychological tendency to remember uncompleted tasks better than completed ones. This is why the mind sometimes wanders back to the things left undone at the end of the day. However, simply writing these tasks down or acknowledging them as future events can release the brain's grip on them. Once the brain perceives a plan is in place, it grants itself permission to let the thought go. This allows the mental space to become clear and still, ready for the restorative process of sleep. The human brain spends about 30 to 40% of its time wandering. This is not a sign of a lack of focus, but rather a vital function of the creative mind. Mind wandering allows the brain to simulate future scenarios, solve complex problems in the background, and integrate personal experiences into a coherent life story. It is a form of internal exploration that is essential for mental health. In the quiet hours, this wandering becomes even more fluid, moving easily between memories and soft, drifting ideas. Psychological studies on the impact of nature sounds have found that the sound of steady rain or a distant wind can synchronize the brain's waves into a slower, more rhythmic pattern. This is known as entrainment. The brain hears the steady, non-threatening sound and matches its own internal pace to that rhythm. It is a physical response to a predictable environment. It tells the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for the stress response, that all is well and it is safe to rest. The concept of the flow state is often discussed in terms of high performance, but there is also a quiet version of flow. It is the feeling of being completely immersed in a simple, repetitive task or a calm environment where time seems to expand. In this state, the ego recedes, and the person feels a sense of unity with their surroundings. Achieving this state before sleep can make the transition into dreams feel like a natural extension of a peaceful evening. Our brains are hardwired for storytelling. We interpret the world through narratives, often without realizing it. This is why we find comfort in the familiar arcs of our lives and the steady progression of the seasons. The mind seeks meaning, but it also seeks rest from meaning. There are times when the best story is one with no conflict and no resolution, just a steady stream of quiet observations that lead toward a profound sense of ease. The mere exposure effect suggests that we tend to develop a preference for things simply because we are familiar with them. This applies to music, people, and even our own internal thoughts. By consistently choosing calm and neutral thoughts in the evening, we train our minds to prefer that state of being. Familiarity creates a sense of safety. The more we practice the art of slowing down, the more the mind recognizes this as its true home. Research into sleep cycles shows that the brain performs a kind of lymphatic clearance during deep rest. This is a physical cleaning process where metabolic waste is washed away from the brain cells. It is as if the mind has its own nightly cleaning crew that prepares the workspace for the following day. Knowing that this vital work is happening can make the act of falling asleep feel like an act of self-care. It is a necessary and productive use of time. The spotlight effect is a psychological phenomenon where people tend to believe they are being noticed more than they actually are. In reality, most people are focused on their own internal experiences. Realizing this can be incredibly liberating. It removes the weight of perceived judgment and allows a person to settle into their own private space without the need for performance. In the darkness of the room, the spotlight is off, and there is only the quiet presence of the self. The human brain has a remarkable ability to adapt to sensory input. This is called sensory adaptation. It is why we stop noticing the ticking of a clock or the hum of a refrigerator after a few minutes. The brain filters out the constant, unchanging details of the environment to focus on what is new. When the environment is kept steady and quiet, the brain eventually runs out of things to monitor, and the level of internal chatter begins to fade away. Introverts and extroverts process information differently, but both require periods of low stimulation to recharge their mental energy. This quiet time is not just a break from activity, it is a period of consolidation. The brain uses these moments to bridge the gap between what we know and what we are learning. It is a silent dialogue that occurs in the quiet spaces between thoughts. The theory of blue space suggests that being near water, or even looking at pictures of water, can significantly reduce stress and improve mood. The psychological impact is linked to the way water moves, its predictability and its soft, rhythmic sounds. The mind finds a deep resonance with the fluidity of water. It reminds us that thoughts, too, can flow and change without causing distress. The paradox of choice explains that having too many options can actually lead to more stress and less satisfaction. In the evening, reducing choices, such as what to listen to or what to think about, can lead to a sense of relief. By narrowing the focus to a few simple, calming facts, the mind is freed from the burden of decision-making. Simplicity is the key to a quiet mind. Cognitive reframing is a psychological technique used to change the way we perceive an event. Instead of viewing the end of the day as a loss of time, we can reframe it as a gain of peace. It is an opportunity to retreat from the world's demands and reconnect with a sense of internal stability. This shift in perspective can change the physical experience of the evening from one of restlessness to one of profound comfort. The peak end rule is a psychological heuristic in which people judge an experience largely based on how they felt at its peak and at its end, rather than the total sum of the experience. By ensuring that the end of your day is filled with gentle, neutral, and calming information, you are setting the tone for how your brain will remember the entire day. Ending on a note of stillness ensures that the memory of the day is one of peace. Muscle memory is not just for physical activities, it applies to the way our nervous system reacts to environmental cues. If we create a consistent ritual of listening to soft facts and slowing our breath, our body begins to recognize these cues as a signal to release tension. The heart rate slows, the muscles in the face relax, and the breath becomes deeper and more rhythmic. It is a biological response that has been practiced and refined over time. The brain's prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functions like planning and decision-making. During the evening, this part of the brain begins to decrease its activity, allowing the more intuitive and sensory parts of the mind to take the lead. This is why we often feel more creative or more sensitive to beauty in the late hours. The rigid structures of the day give way to a more fluid and relaxed way of being. Social mimicry, or the chameleon effect, is the tendency for people to unconsciously imitate the postures, mannerisms, and facial expressions of those around them. This also applies to the tone of voice and the pace of speech. By listening to a slow and steady voice, your own internal pace naturally begins to slow down to match it. It is a subtle form of social synchronization that promotes a feeling of calm and belonging. The feeling of being understood by another person has a profound effect on the brain's reward system. When we experience empathy, the brain releases oxytocin, which helps to lower stress levels and create a sense of safety and social bonding. Even in solitude, reflecting on moments of connection can trigger this same biological response. The mind does not always distinguish between a current experience and a deeply felt memory, allowing us to access feelings of warmth whenever we need them. In psychology, the concept of unconditional positive regard suggests that accepting oneself without judgment is a key component of mental health. Nighttime is an ideal period to practice this acceptance. There is no need to evaluate the day's successes or failures. Instead, one can simply exist as a conscious being, acknowledging thoughts as they arrive and letting them pass without attachment. This creates a mental environment that is hospitable to rest. The Benjamin Franklin effect is a psychological finding where doing a favor for someone actually increases your liking for that person. This happens because the brain seeks to resolve the dissonance between the effort spent and the opinion of the recipient. It concludes that if you help them, you must like them. This highlights how our actions often shape our feelings in ways we do not expect. It is a reminder that small, gentle actions can lead to a more positive internal landscape. Research into the default mode network of the brain shows that when we are not focused on the outside world, our brain is busy integrating information and maintaining our sense of self. This network is highly active during rest and daydreaming. It is during these times that the brain makes sense of our experiences, turning a collection of moments into a unified life story. Rest is not an absence of activity, but a different, more internal kind of productivity. The psychology of savoring involves the conscious effort to appreciate a positive experience while it is happening. At night, this might mean savoring the softness of a pillow, the warmth of a blanket, or the quietness of the air. By focusing on these small, sensory details, we ground ourselves in the present moment. This grounding prevents the mind from drifting into worries about the future or regrets about the past. The human brain is naturally inclined toward loss aversion, where the pain of losing something is felt more intensely than the joy of gaining something of equal value. This is a survival mechanism from our ancestral past. However, in a safe and modern environment, we can consciously acknowledge this bias. We can choose to focus on the abundance of the present moment, the breath in the lungs, the safety of the room, rather than what might be missing. The primacy effect is a cognitive bias that results in better recall for items at the beginning of a list or experience. This is why the first few moments of relaxation are so important. By establishing a slow and steady rhythm early on, the mind accepts this as the primary state for the duration of the night. It sets a baseline of calm that persists even as the conscious mind begins to fade. Psychologists have studied minimalist living and its impact on the mind, finding that reducing physical clutter often leads to reduced mental clutter. A simple, sparse environment allows the brain to rest because there are fewer objects to identify and categorize. This same principle can be applied to our thoughts. By choosing to think about simple, uncomplicated things, we give our mental faculties a well-deserved break. The overjustification effect occurs when an external incentive, such as money or prizes, decreases a person's intrinsic motivation to perform a task. If we do something purely for the love of it, it remains a source of joy. Sleep is one of the few things we do purely for its own sake and for the sake of our health. There is no external reward needed, which makes it a deeply authentic and satisfying human experience. Our brains possess mirror neurons, which fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that same action. This is the basis for human empathy and learning. When we listen to a description of someone breathing deeply or resting in a quiet garden, our own brain simulates that experience. We can literally feel the relaxation by simply contemplating it. The availability heuristic is a mental shortcut that relies on immediate examples that come to a given person's mind when evaluating a specific topic. If we fill our minds with examples of peace and science, our brain will naturally conclude that the world is a peaceful and understandable place. We can curate our own mental availability to favor serenity over chaos. Cognitive ease is the state in which the brain is functioning without strain. This happens when information is clear, familiar, and non-threatening. When we are in a state of cognitive ease, we are more likely to feel happy, comfortable, and safe. The goal of listening to soft facts is to induce this state, allowing the brain to slide effortlessly into the deeper levels of unconsciousness. The bystander effect is well known, but its opposite, the feeling of personal agency, is just as significant. Realizing that you have the power to control your own internal environment is a core tenet of psychological resilience. You have the ability to choose silence. You have the ability to choose rest. This sense of control is a powerful antidote to the stresses of daily life. Research into forest bathing or Shinrin-yoku has shown that being in a forest environment lowers heart rate and blood pressure while boosting the immune system. Interestingly, the brain responds in a similar way to the visual patterns of trees and the smell of wood, even if we are only imagining them. The brain's connection to nature is deep and ancient, and it finds a unique kind of safety in the forest's complexity and stillness. The halo effect is a type of cognitive bias where our overall impression of a person influences how we feel and think about their character. We can apply a positive halo effect to the night itself. By viewing the darkness and the quiet as good and healing, every aspect of the evening, the shadows, the silence, the cool air, takes on a positive and comforting quality. The psychology of habituation explains how we stop responding to a stimulus after repeated exposure. If we make relaxation a nightly habit, the body begins to habituate to the state of being calm. It becomes the default setting. The nervous system stops looking for reasons to be alert and instead looks for reasons to be still. Eudaimonia is a Greek word often translated as flourishing or well-being. In psychology, it refers to the type of happiness that comes from living a meaningful and purposeful life. Part of that flourishing involves the ability to rest and recover. To flourish, a person must be able to periodically disconnect from the world to reconnect with themselves. The self-reference effect is the tendency for people to encode information differently depending on the extent to which they are involved in the information. When you hear about how the brain processes rest, and you realize your own brain is doing that very thing right now, the information becomes more meaningful. It creates a bridge between the fact and your personal experience, anchoring you in the present. The human brain is a master of homeostasis, always seeking to maintain a stable internal environment despite external changes. This applies to body temperature, hydration, and even emotional states. Sleep is the ultimate tool for restoring homeostasis. It balances the chemicals in the brain and resets the body's systems, ensuring that everything is in its proper place for a new day. Belief perseverance is the tendency to cling to one's initial belief even after receiving new information that contradicts it. We can use this to our advantage by firmly believing in our own ability to rest. Once the mind accepts the belief that I am a person who sleeps well, it will work to maintain that belief, even during periods of occasional restlessness. The spacing effect of in-learning shows that we retain information better when it is presented in small chunks over a long period rather than all at once. This script follows that principle, offering one small fact at a time, allowing the mind to absorb the information without feeling overwhelmed. It is a slow and steady process that respects the brain's natural pace. Anhedonia is the inability to feel pleasure, but its opposite, the capacity for micro-joys, is a key to psychological health. Finding pleasure in the weight of a blanket or the silence of a room is a way to combat the stresses of life. These tiny moments of satisfaction act as anchors, keeping the mind from being swept away by larger, more complex concerns. The imagination inflation effect occurs when imagining an event makes it feel more real or likely to happen. By imagining a successful and restful night, you are statistically more likely to experience one. The brain prepares for the reality it envisions. If the vision is one of soft light and quiet thoughts, the body will follow that lead. The concept of learned optimism suggests that we can train our minds to focus on favorable outcomes through conscious practice. By repeating the process of entering a calm state, the brain creates a neural pathway that makes it easier to find that same peace tomorrow. Optimism in this sense is not about ignoring reality, but about recognizing the mind's inherent capacity to recover and heal. In the stillness of the night, this optimism manifests as a quiet trust in the body's natural rhythms. Research into haptic perception, the way we experience the world through touch, reveals that soft textures can have an immediate calming effect on the brain's emotional centers. When the skin moves against a smooth fabric, it sends signals to the somatosensory cortex that are interpreted as safety and comfort. This physical sensation acts as a silent anchor, grounding the mind in the immediate, tangible present and pulling it away from abstract worries. That false consensus effect is a cognitive bias where we overestimate how much others share our beliefs and behaviors. However, in the realm of sleep, there is a true consensus. Every human being who has ever lived has shared this need for rest. You are participating in a universal biological tradition that connects you to every person on the planet. This shared experience creates a sense of invisible community, a quiet reminder that you are never truly alone in your need for stillness. The restorative niche is a term used in personality psychology to describe a physical or mental space where people go to return to their true selves. For many, the hours before sleep serve as this niche. It is a time when social roles are stripped away. You are not a worker, a student, or a provider in this moment, you are simply a person existing in a state of quiet observation. This return to the essential self is vital for long-term psychological health. In the study of chronopsychology, researchers have found that our perception of time changes as the sun goes down. In the absence of bright light, the brain's internal clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, signals the release of melatonin. As this hormone levels rise, that psychological second seems to stretch. The urgency of the day fades, and a minute feels like a long, slow wave rather than a ticking deadline. Embracing this expansion of time allows the mind to decompress. The anchor and adjust heuristic is a mental process where we start with a specific value and then adjust away from it. If you set your anchor as a state of deep, heavy relaxation, your mind will naturally adjust all other thoughts to match that weight. By starting with the heavy sensation of your limbs, every passing thought begins to feel equally heavy and slow, making it harder for them to move quickly or cause agitation. Transience is one of the 7 sins of memory, but in the context of sleep, it is a virtue. It is the tendency for memories to fade over time. The brain intentionally allows the trivial details of the day to wash away so that it can preserve what is truly important. This mental shedding is like clearing a path through a crowded forest. By morning, the path will be clear, and the mind will feel spacious and new. The Proteus effect describes how individuals may conform to the perceived characteristics of their digital or mental avatars. If you visualize yourself as a calm, steady mountain or a deep, still lake, your brain begins to adopt the psychological attributes of those images. You become more resilient and less prone to being disturbed by the weather of your thoughts. This mental modeling is a gentle way to guide the personality toward stability. Effective forecasting is our ability to predict how we will feel in the future. We often overestimate the intensity and duration of our future emotions. Realizing that tomorrow's challenges will likely feel more manageable than they seem tonight is a psychological relief. The mind, when rested, is a much more capable problem solver than the mind that is tired. Giving yourself permission to stop thinking is an investment in your future effectiveness. The clutter effect in psychology shows that an abundance of visual stimuli can overtax the brain's processing power. In the darkness, this visual load is removed. The brain no longer has to track the edges of furniture or the colors of the wall. This reduction in input noise allows the brain to transition from active scanning mode to internal reflection mode. It is a shift from the outer world to the inner landscape. Self-compassion involves treating oneself with the same kindness one would show to a friend. Psychologically, this practice lowers the heart rate and reduces the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. When you acknowledge that the day was long and that you deserved this period of nothingness, you are performing a mental act of healing. This kindness creates a soft atmosphere where sleep can arrive without being forced. The misattribution of arousals occurs when the brain is unsure why the body is feeling a certain way and looks for a reason in the environment. If your heart is beating fast because of caffeine or a late movie, your brain might mistakenly think you are anxious. By consciously slowing the breath, you provide the brain with new data. The brain sees the slow breathing and concludes that the body must be calm, which in turn settles the mind. Episodic memory is the type of memory that allows us to travel back in time to specific events. As we drift towards sleep, these memories often become more vivid but less linear. This is a sign that the brain is beginning to loosen its grip on logical structure, preparing for the symbolic language of dreams. This loosening is a positive development. It is the mind's way of saying it is ready to stop being the pilot and start being the passenger. The planning fallacy is the tendency to underestimate how much time it will take to complete a task. We often carry this stress into the night. However, recognizing this as a common human bias allows us to forgive ourselves for not finishing everything. The world will continue to turn even if a few tasks remain on a list. The most important task at this moment is the restoration of your own energy. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to switch between thinking about two different concepts. In the evening, this flexibility allows us to move from the concrete problems of life to the abstract beauty of science and psychology. This movement acts as a mental stretching exercise, relieving the tension of fixed thinking. A flexible mind is a mind that can easily bend toward the quietude of sleep. Research into auditory icons shows that certain sounds carry universal meanings of safety. The sound of a calm, low-frequency voice is often associated with parental care and social stability in our evolutionary history. This is why a steady narration can feel so deeply protective. It satisfies an ancient part of the brain that is always listening for signs that the environment is secure. The decoy effect is a phenomenon where people tend to have a specific change in preference between two options when also presented with a third option that is asymmetrical. In your current environment, the options might be a worrying, restlessness, or listening to facts. By introducing the third option, the neutral observation of facts, the brain finds it much easier to choose listening over worrying. It provides a neutral middle ground that bypasses the binary of being awake or asleep. The availability cascade is a self-reinforcing process in which a collective belief gains more and more plausibility through its increasing repetition in public discourse. You can create a private availability cascade for yourself by surrounding your mind with thoughts of stillness. As you hear the word calm or slow repeated in various contexts, the belief that you are currently in a state of calm becomes more and more plausible to your nervous system. The spotlight effect often makes us feel that our internal struggles are visible to others. In reality, your internal world is your own private sanctuary. No one else can see the thoughts you are letting go of. This privacy is a form of freedom. You can be whoever you need to be in this moment, without any external expectations. You are the sole inhabitant of your current mental space. Social proof is the psychological phenomenon where people assume the actions of others in an attempt to reflect correct behavior for a given situation. Imagine billions of other living things currently resting. By following their example, you are aligning yourself with the correct biological behavior for this time of night. You are following the social and biological proof of the natural world. The end of history illusion is a bias where people believe they have experienced significant personal growth up to the present moment, but will not substantially grow or change in the future. However, every night of sleep is a period of quiet growth. Your brain is reorganizing itself, making you a slightly different, more refined version of yourself by morning. You are a work in progress, and sleep is the time when the most important edits are made. Somatic markers are the bodily sensations linked to emotions, such as the gut feeling or a heavy heart. By focusing on neutral or positive somatic markers, like the warmth of your hands or the coolness of the air on your forehead, you can influence your emotional state. The brain reads these physical markers to determine how it should feel. Cool, steady, and warm sensations lead to a cool, steady, and warm mind. The psychology of mental accounting describes how we categorize and treat our time and energy as if they were in different bank accounts. During the day, we spend our active currency on tasks and interactions. But at night, we move into a savings account. This is time that cannot be spent, it must be stored. Recognizing this boundary helps the brain stop looking for ways to be productive. There is a deep satisfaction in knowing that, for the next several hours, your only job is to be the guardian of your own stillness. The impact bias is our tendency to overestimate the length or intensity of future emotional states. When we are tired, a small problem can feel like an eternal obstacle. However, psychological research shows that our psychological immune system is incredibly efficient at returning us to a baseline of contentment once we have rested. The worries of the night are often just biological shadows caused by a low battery. They do not represent the truth of your life, they only represent your current need for recovery. In the study of attention restoration theory, researchers found that urban environments drain our cognitive resources because they require directed attention, the kind where we must constantly filter out distractions and focus on goals. Nature, and the quiet of a dark room, provide soft fascination. This is a type of attention that requires no effort. You can listen to the sound of your own breath or the steady hum of silence without any mental strain. This allows the prefrontal cortex to fully disengage and replenish its energy. The hyperbolic discounting theory suggests that humans have a natural tendency to prefer smaller, immediate rewards over larger, later rewards. Sleep is the ultimate delayed reward. While it might feel tempting to stay awake for one more hour of entertainment, the psychological payoff of a well-rested brain tomorrow is vastly superior. By choosing rest now, you are making a sophisticated, long-term investment in your own happiness. Your future self will wake up to the dividends of the peace you are cultivating right now. Cognitive dissonance occurs when we hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. If you tell yourself you are trying to sleep while your mind is racing, you create tension. A more effective psychological approach is to stop trying altogether. Instead, adopt the belief that you are simply lying still and enjoying the sensation of gravity. When there is no goal, there is no dissonance. Without the pressure to fall asleep, the brain often finds its way there much faster. The Ganzfeld effect is a phenomenon of perception caused by exposure to an unstructured, uniform stimulation field. In a dark, quiet room, the brain eventually stops receiving data from the outside world. To compensate, it begins to turn inward, often producing soft, flowing imagery that precedes dreaming. This is a natural and safe transition. It is the brain's way of entertaining itself while the conscious ego steps aside. These hypnagogic images are a sign that you are moving deeper into the restorative layers of the mind. In psychology, distancing is a technique where you observe your thoughts from a third-person perspective. Instead of thinking "I am anxious," you might think "I am experiencing a thought about anxiety." This small linguistic shift creates space. It turns a feeling into an object that can be studied and then set aside. As you lie here, you can watch your thoughts drift by like leaves on a slow-moving river. You are the observer on the bank, not the leaf in the current. The peak-end rule suggests that we remember an experience based on its most intense point and its conclusion. By making the end of your day the most peaceful point, you ensure that your overall memory of this 24-hour cycle is one of serenity. Even if the day was busy or loud, these final hours of quiet rewrite the narrative of the day in your long-term memory. You are ending this chapter of your life in a state of grace. The priming effect shows that exposure to one stimulus influences a response to a subsequent stimulus, without conscious guidance. By repeatedly hearing words like soft, heavy, still, and calm, your subconscious mind is being primed for a state of relaxation. Your nervous system begins to prepare the muscles and the heart for a lower level of activity simply because the language of the environment suggests it is time. It is a gentle form of linguistic hypnosis that aligns the body with the intention of rest. The self-fulfilling prophecy is a psychological process where a person's expectations lead them to act in ways that make those expectations come true. If you expect your mind to be a safe, quiet place, you will naturally settle into a more relaxed posture. This physical relaxation then sends a signal back to the brain that everything is okay, creating a loop of increasing tranquility. You are the architect of your own internal atmosphere. Research into hindsight bias shows that we tend to see past events as more predictable than they actually were. This can lead to late-night should-have thoughts. However, accepting that the past was just as complex and uncertain as the present allows for self-forgiveness. You did the best you could with the information you had at the time. Now, that time has passed, and the only reality is the cool air and the steady rhythm of your heart. The paradox of hedonism suggests that the direct pursuit of pleasure is often less successful than the pursuit of other goals that result in pleasure as a byproduct. Similarly, the direct pursuit of sleep can be counterproductive. By pursuing neutrality instead, just being still, just being neutral, sleep often arrives as a natural byproduct. The absence of effort is the most powerful tool in the psychology of rest. Affective labeling is the simple act of putting a name to an emotion. Brain scans show that when people label a negative emotion, the activity in the amygdala decreases. If a thought feels heavy or sharp, simply naming it as such can reduce its power over you. It is a way of cataloging the mind's library before turning out the lights for the night. Once everything is labeled and put in its place, the mind feels orderly and ready for the darkness. The duration neglect is a psychological observation that people's judgments of the unpleasantness of experiences depend very little on the duration of those experiences. This means that even if you have been awake for a while, the unpleasantness does not have to accumulate. Each moment is new. You can decide right now that the next 5 minutes will be entirely peaceful, regardless of how the last hour felt. The clock is not your enemy, it is just a measure of a journey you are taking at your own pace. The subliminal mere exposure effect suggests that we can develop a preference for things we aren't even consciously aware of. As these facts drift into the background of your mind, they are building a foundation of cognitive ease. Even if you aren't actively listening to every word, your brain is absorbing the steady, predictable cadence. This creates a sense of safety that allows the sentinel part of your brain to go off duty. Locus of control is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces, have control over the outcome of events in their lives. In the quiet of the night, your locus of control is entirely internal. You cannot control the weather, the news, or the morning's tasks, but you have absolute control over the rhythm of your breath and the focus of your thoughts. This realization of internal sovereignty is a deeply grounding psychological truth. The echoic memory is the sensory memory register specific to the auditory domain. It can hold sounds for a few seconds after they are heard. As you hear these sentences, they linger for a moment in your mind, creating a continuous thread of calm. This thread acts as a safety line, keeping you connected to the present moment even as your consciousness begins to fray at the edges. Transactive memory is a psychological hypothesis that groups of people collectively store and retrieve information. In a way, you are using this script as an external memory source. You don't have to think of your own calming thoughts, they are being provided for you. This reduces the cognitive load on your brain, allowing you to outsource the work of thinking so that you can focus entirely on the work of resting. The overconfidence effect often leads us to believe we can handle more than we should. Nighttime is a reminder of our beautiful, human limitations. We are biological beings that require a daily reset. There is a quiet humility in accepting that we must stop. This acceptance is not a weakness, but a profound alignment with the laws of nature. By admitting that you are tired, you are showing a healthy and realistic respect for your own mind. The spacing effect suggests that we learn better when information is spread out. By taking long, slow pauses between these ideas, we are giving your brain time to integrate the feeling of each fact. It is a slow drip of information that nourishes the mind without overwhelming the senses. This deliberate pacing is the psychological equivalent of a slow, steady rain on a thirsty garden. The concept of prospective memory involves remembering to perform a planned action in the future. Often, when we lie down to sleep, our prospective memory becomes hyperactive, reminding us of everything we need to do the following day. Psychologically, the best way to quiet this system is to physically offload the memory. By simply acknowledging that the sun will rise and the tasks will be there, the brain's executive function feels it has fulfilled its duty. It can then safely move from a state of vigilance to a state of dormancy. There is a gentle security in knowing that the future is on hold, and for now, your only responsibility is the present stillness of the room. Research into inhibitory control shows that our ability to suppress irrelevant thoughts is a limited resource that gets depleted throughout the day. This is why it feels harder to stop worrying at night than it does in the morning. Understanding this allows for a more compassionate view of the mind. You are not failing to be calm, you are simply experiencing the natural end of a daily cognitive cycle. By stopping the struggle against these thoughts and instead letting them exist as neutral background noise, you actually regain a sense of mental space. The noise eventually fades when it is no longer being actively resisted. The misinformation effect demonstrates how easily our memories can be influenced by post-event information. We can use a positive version of this to recolor our day. By focusing on the quietest, most neutral moments of the last 14 hours, the taste of a drink, the sight of a cloud, the feeling of a chair, we influence our overall memory of the day toward a more peaceful narrative. The brain is highly suggestive in the twilight hours. Filling it with soft, technical observations about the nature of the mind acts as a buffer against the more jarring emotional memories of the day. In the study of ego depletion, psychologists suggest that willpower is like a muscle that tires with use. By the time you reach your bed, your willpower muscle is at its most fatigued. This is the perfect time to give up control. Sleep is not an act of will, it is an act of surrender. There is a deep, psychological relief in realizing that you do not have to try to fall asleep. In fact, the more you stop trying, the more you align with the natural, effortless processes of the autonomic nervous system. The system knows exactly what to do. The availability heuristic causes us to judge the probability of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. If we spend our final waking moments thinking about the complexity of the human brain and the steady laws of psychology, we prime our subconscious to view the world as an orderly and safe place. We are replacing high-arousal thoughts with low-arousal facts. This lowers the metabolic activity in the brain's emotional centers, signaling to the body that the environment is secure enough for deep, uninterrupted rest. Cognitive load theory suggests that our working memory has a very limited capacity. When we listen to slow, rhythmic descriptions of science, we occupy that capacity with neutral data. This leaves no room for the complex, high-load thoughts of daily life. It is like filling a vessel with sand so there is no room for water. The sand is stable and unmoving, providing a solid foundation for the mind to settle upon. Each word acts as a small grain, slowly filling the space until the mind is too heavy to do anything but rest. The basking in reflected glory phenomenon shows that our self-esteem can be bolstered by the successes of others or the grandeur of the world around us. Reflecting on the sheer complexity of human psychology, how billions of neurons work in perfect harmony to create a single thought, can create a sense of awe. In psychological terms, awe has been shown to diminish that small self, making our individual worries feel insignificant in the face of the vast, beautiful machinery of life. This shift in scale is incredibly soothing. Self-perception theory posits that we develop our attitudes by observing our own behavior. If you observe yourself lying perfectly still, breathing deeply, and listening to calm information, your brain concludes, "I must be very relaxed." It then adjusts your internal chemistry to match that observation. You are essentially tricking your nervous system into a state of peace by acting as if you are already there. The mind follows the body's lead in a graceful, silent dance toward unconsciousness. That spotlight effect is the tendency to overestimate how much others notice our appearance or behavior. In the dark, the spotlight is completely extinguished. There is a profound psychological freedom in being completely unobserved. You are currently in a space where no one expects anything from you. You are free from the social self, the version of you that exists for others. Here, you can be as soft and as still as you wish, returning to a state of pure, unadorned existence. Mental simulation is the process of representing hypothetical scenarios in the mind. While this can sometimes lead to anxiety, it can also be used for relaxation training. By simulating a walk through a quiet laboratory or a library of soft facts, you engage the brain's spatial reasoning in a non-threatening way. This distracts the verbal centers of the brain, the part that talks to you in worries, and shifts activity to the visual and sensory areas, which are more closely linked to the dreaming state. The restorative effect of nature isn't limited to being physically outdoors. Even thinking about the biological systems that govern our lives, the way our pupils dilate, the way our lungs expand, the way our heart beats without us ever asking it to, it can trigger a biophilia response. This is an innate love for life and living systems. Recognizing that you are a part of this grand, biological harmony can reduce feelings of isolation and stress, replacing them with a sense of belonging to the natural world. In psychology, habituation is the process by which we stop noticing a repeated sound or sensation. This is the goal of a steady, calm narration. The voice becomes a part of the environment, like the wind or a distant stream. Once the brain habituates to the sound, it stops listening with the conscious mind and starts feeling the rhythm with the subconscious. This transition is a key marker of the movement from light sleep to deep, restorative slumber. The primacy effect means we remember the first things we hear most clearly. The first thing you heard tonight was a promise of safety and stillness. That promise remains the primary frame for everything that follows. No matter how many facts we discuss, they are all contained within that original atmosphere of peace. Your mind is being held in a container of safety, allowing you to let go of your own internal defenses one by one. Temporal discounting is our tendency to value the present more than the future. However, at night, we can invert this. We can value the future peace of tomorrow morning. By choosing to stop thinking now, you are giving a gift to the person you will be when the sun rises. This act of altruism toward your future self creates a sense of internal harmony. You are taking care of yourself in the most fundamental way possible. The smear measurement effect suggests that simply asking someone about their intentions makes them more likely to follow through. By listening to these facts about rest, you are essentially asking your brain to consider the state of rest. This increases the psychological probability that your brain will move into that state. You are setting an internal intention without the stress of a command. It is a gentle invitation that the mind is naturally inclined to accept. Positive reinforcement occurs when a behavior is followed by a desirable consequence. The feeling of your muscles relaxing as you listen is the reinforcement for your stillness. The more you relax, the better it feels, and the more your brain wants to continue the behavior. It is a self-sustaining cycle of comfort. You are training your nervous system to enjoy the act of letting go, making it easier and more pleasant each time you do it. The false uniqueness effect is the tendency to underestimate the extent to which others possess the same positive traits as us. In this quiet moment, however, you can recognize a universal positive trait, the capacity for stillness. Every human mind has a quiet mode. It is a standard feature of our biological hardware. You are simply activating a program that has been part of the human experience for hundreds of thousands of years. It is a reliable, time-tested process. Cognitive reframing allows us to look at the dark not as an absence of light, but as a presence of peace. The darkness is a physical shield that protects you from the distractions of the world. It is a cool, velvet blanket for the eyes. By reframing the night as a period of sensory luxury, the mind stops seeking stimulation and begins to savor the lack of it. The silence becomes rich rather than empty. Research into mirror neurons suggests that if you imagine a person sitting in a quiet room, reading a book by a dim light, your brain fires in a way that mimics that calmness. You can borrow the peace of a hypothetical scene. As we move through these facts, you can imagine a scientist quietly recording observations in a still, midnight lab. Their focus is steady, their movements are slow, and their environment is silent. Your brain mirrors that steady, slow, and silent state. The Zeigarnik effect states that we remember unfinished tasks better. But psychologists have found that simply assigning those tasks to a specific time in the future, say 9 a.m. tomorrow, acts as a closing of the file. Your brain's open loops are tied off. The tension is released. The files are stored away in the cabinet of the mind, and the office is closed for the evening. The lights are off, and the halls are quiet. Social facilitation is the tendency for people to perform differently when in the presence of others. Even though you are alone, the presence of a calm, guiding voice can act as a social facilitator for relaxation. It provides a standard of behavior, slow, steady, and unhurried, that the mind naturally wants to follow. You are being coached into a state of rest by the steady cadence of the information being shared. The planning fallacy is a psychological phenomenon where we underestimate the time required to complete future tasks, often leading to a sense of urgency that carries into the late hours. However, by acknowledging this bias, you can consciously decide to defer that urgency. In the context of a 10-hour psychology session, the brain begins to understand that time is no longer a resource to be managed, but a medium to be experienced. This shift from doing to being is a fundamental transition in sleep psychology. As the prefrontal cortex reduces its activity, the executive part of you that worries about schedules steps down, allowing the experimental part of you to take over. Research into haptic feedback suggests that the physical sensations we feel can directly influence our cognitive state. When you feel the weight of a heavy blanket, your brain interprets this deep pressure stimulation as a signal of safety, much like a grounded physical embrace. This triggers the release of serotonin, which is a precursor to melatonin. The mind doesn't just think itself into sleep, it is often pulled there by the body's physical interaction with the environment. Every point of contact between your body and your bed is a data point for your brain, confirming that you are supported and secure. The over-justification effect occurs when an external reward decreases our intrinsic interest in an activity. Sleep is one of the few human experiences that remains entirely intrinsic. You are not resting for a grade, a salary, or an audience. You are resting because it is the natural state of your biological being. This makes the act of resting incredibly authentic. In a world that often demands performance, the night is a performance-free zone. There is no right or wrong way to lie still. There is only the steady, neutral reality of your own existence. Cognitive ease is the state in which the brain processes information effortlessly. This is achieved through repetition, clear language, and a calm delivery. When the brain is in a state of cognitive ease, it is less likely to trigger the alert systems of the amygdala. By staying within the realm of soft science, facts that are interesting but not alarming, the mind stays in a shallow pond of thought. It is deep enough to be engaging, but shallow enough that you can easily step out of it into the depths of sleep. The availability cascade can be used to your advantage by surrounding yourself with a cascade of calm. As you hear more and more about the systems that keep you safe, the autonomic nervous system, the glymphatic system, the circadian rhythm, the belief that you are safe becomes a self-reinforcing reality. Your brain begins to see its safety as the most available and logical conclusion for your current situation. This is a deliberate psychological strategy to override the negativity bias that often plagues the human mind in the dark. In evolutionary psychology, the Sentinel hypothesis suggests that in ancestral groups, individuals would take turns staying awake to ensure the safety of the group. Today, when you are safe in your home, your brain might still feel a lingering sentinel duty. By listening to a steady, external voice, you are essentially outsourcing that sentinel role. The brain hears the voice and concludes that someone else is on watch, which gives it permission to finally lower its own guard. You are no longer the lone protector, you are part of a quiet, collective moment of rest. That spotlight effect often makes us feel as though our internal thoughts are loud and visible. But as the world grows quiet, you can embrace the cloak of invisibility. No one can hear the thoughts you are dismissing. No one can see the tension leaving your shoulders. This total privacy is a psychological luxury. It allows for a level of unmasking that is impossible during the day. You can let your mind become as messy, as slow, or as empty as it needs to be, with no one to judge the process. Mental accounting for energy involves realizing that you cannot borrow energy from tomorrow to use tonight. You must simply wait for the deposit that sleep provides. Accepting this lack of credit helps to stop the mind from trying to solve tomorrow's problems tonight. Tomorrow's problems belong to tomorrow's energy. Tonight's energy is only sufficient for the act of lying still and breathing. This clear boundary is a powerful tool for mental organization, preventing spillover stress from contaminating your rest. That mere exposure effect describes how we prefer things we are familiar with. The more you listen to these psychological observations, the more familiar they become. Eventually, the very sound of a slow, scientific explanation becomes a conditioned stimulus for relaxation. Your brain associates the tone and the content with the act of falling asleep. Over time, you don't even need to process the meaning of the words. The mere sound of the sleepy science is enough to trigger the physical response of yawning and slowing the heart. Self-compassion in psychology is linked to lower levels of cortisol and higher levels of heart rate variability. When you tell yourself, "It is okay that I am not asleep yet," you are practicing a form of radical acceptance. This acceptance removes the secondary stress of being awake. Often, it isn't the wakefulness that keeps us up, but the worry about being awake. By removing the worry, the wakefulness becomes a neutral, peaceful state that eventually, and naturally, transitions into sleep on its own timeline. The duration neglect principle means that the total time you spend falling asleep doesn't actually matter to your brain's long-term memory. Whether it takes 10 minutes or an hour, that's peak of your experience, the relaxation, and the end, falling asleep, are what your brain will remember. This means you can't fail at falling asleep. As long as the process is calm, the brain will classify the entire night as a success. This removes the pressure of the clock, allowing you to treat time as an infinite, unimportant resource. Sensory adaptation allows us to stop noticing the weight of our clothes or the smell of a room. This same principle applies to these words. As the script continues, your conscious mind will begin to adapt to the cadence, eventually filtering it into the background. This is the desired outcome. The voice should become like a soft fan or a distant rain, a white noise of information that provides a steady floor for your thoughts to rest upon, until you no longer notice where the voice ends and your own dreams begin. The Pygmalion effect suggests that high expectations lead to improved performance. If you expect this session to be the most restorative 10 hours of your week, your brain will look for evidence to support that. It will amplify the feeling of the sheets, the quietness of the air, and the heaviness of your eyes. You are essentially programming your nervous system for success. By visualizing the glymphatic wash cleaning your brain cells, you are giving your mind a productive, visual task that supports the biological reality of what is about to happen. Transactive memory is the idea that we store information in the people and tools around us. By allowing this script to hold the facts for you, your own memory systems can go offline. You don't have to remember these psychological terms. They are being held here for you, in this recording, in this moment. This offloading of information is like putting down a heavy backpack at the end of a long hike. You can finally stand tall and light, unburdened by the need to hold onto knowledge. The restorative niche is a concept where even extroverts need a place to return to their baseline. The night is the ultimate restorative niche for the human psyche. It is the only time when the ego is not being constantly battered by social interactions or external stimuli. In this niche, the self can expand and contract without friction. This psychological breathing room is essential for preventing burnout and maintaining a coherent sense of identity in a fast-paced world. Effective forecasting often fails because we forget how resilient we are. You might worry that being tired tomorrow will be a disaster, but psychology shows that the human brain is remarkably good at powering through and finding moments of joy even under less than ideal conditions. Knowing that you will be okay regardless of how much you sleep tonight is the ultimate safety net for the mind. It removes the high stakes of sleep, and when the stakes are low, the mind is much more likely to relax. The bystander effect suggests that we are less likely to act if we think someone else will. In the context of your internal world, you can imagine your worrying mind as a bystander. If the calm mind takes the lead, the worrying mind will simply step back and watch. By focusing on these neutral, psychological observations, you are giving the calm mind the dominant role. The other parts of your personality, the planner, the critic, the dreamer, will naturally follow the lead of the most dominant and steady actor in the room. Locus of control research shows that feeling in control of your immediate environment reduces stress. While you can't control the world, you have absolute control over your microenvironment. You can choose the temperature of the air, the position of your body, and the focus of your ears. This small-scale sovereignty is a powerful psychological anchor. It reminds you that, in this very specific here and now, You are the master of your own peace. The halo effect can be applied to the sensation of tiredness itself. Instead of seeing tiredness as exhaustion, negative, you can see it as readiness for restoration, positive. This positive halo transforms the heavy feeling in your limbs from a burden into a luxury. It is the sweet ache of a body that has earned its rest. This cognitive shift changes the chemical signals being sent to your brain, favoring the release of feel-good neurotransmitters that support a smooth transition into sleep. Finally, the spacing effect ensures that these ideas are not crowded. There is space between every fact. Space for you to breathe. Space for the silence to return. This space is just as important as the words. It is the negative space of the script, the silence that gives the facts their value. As you drift further, the space will grow larger, and the words will grow softer, until there is nothing left but the quiet, rhythmic pulse of a mind at peace. The primacy of effect is a psychological theory suggesting that our emotional reactions to stimuli often occur more rapidly and with greater influence than our cognitive evaluations. This means that the feeling of the environment, the coolness of the air, the rhythm of a voice, the softness of the bed, reaches the emotional brain before the logical brain even begins to process the meaning of these words. By ensuring the affective tone of your surroundings is consistently neutral and safe, you are speaking directly to the oldest parts of your nervous system. You are bypassing the busy, analytical mind and communicating peace to the primal self that only understands safety and rest. In the field of environmental psychology, the concept of wayfinding describes how we navigate physical spaces. In the internal space of the mind, we also use landmarks to find our way toward sleep. These landmarks are not visual, they are sensory and conceptual. A landmark might be the specific weight of your hand on the mattress or a recurring thought about the vastness of the stars. By returning to these same mental landmarks every night, you create a well-trodden path in your psyche. The brain becomes an expert at navigating this route, making the journey from wide awake to deep sleep feel shorter and more inevitable with every repetition. The telescoping effect is a cognitive bias where people perceive recent events as being more remote than they are, or remote events as being more recent. At night, your perception of the day can telescope, making the morning's stresses feel much farther away than they actually are. This is a helpful distortion. It creates a psychological buffer zone between then and now. In the now, the day's events are merely distant memories, losing their emotional sharpness. You are safely tucked into the present moment, where the only reality is the slow, steady expansion and contraction of your chest. Research into metacognition, thinking about thinking, shows that being aware of your own mental states can help you regulate them. If you notice your mind beginning to spiral into a what-if scenario, you can observe this process metacognitively. You can say to yourself, "My brain is currently generating a simulation." This detached observation prevents you from getting inside the simulation. You remain the director of the play, rather than an actor caught in the drama. This high-level perspective is incredibly stabilizing, allowing you to maintain your position as a calm observer of your own internal landscape. That focusing illusion suggests that nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it. When you focus on a single worry at 2 a.m., that worry expands to fill your entire mental horizon. However, by intentionally shifting your focus to a neutral science fact, you shrink that worry back down to its true size. The focusing illusion works both ways. By focusing on the miraculous way your autonomic nervous system manages your heartbeat and digestion without any effort from you, that sense of biological safety becomes your entire reality. You are magnifying the peace and minimizing the pressure. The frequency illusion, also known as the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, occurs when something you recently learned suddenly seems to appear everywhere. After hearing about the psychological mechanisms of rest, you may start to notice them in your own body. You might notice the exact moment your muscles habituate to the bed or the moment your sensory adaptation kicks in. This increased awareness isn't meant to keep you awake. Rather, it turns the process of falling asleep into a familiar, predictable sequence of events. The more you see the science of sleep working within you, the more you trust the process. Cognitive appraisal theory posits that our emotions are determined by our appraisal of an event, rather than the event itself. If you appraise your current state of being awake as insomnia, you will feel distress. But if you appraise it as a period of quiet, vertical rest, you will feel calm. The physical reality, lying in bed with your eyes closed, is identical in both scenarios. The only difference is the psychological label you apply. By choosing the most neutral, low-pressure appraisal possible, you remove the biological alarm and allow the body to proceed with its natural transition into unconsciousness. The endowment effect is a finding in behavioral economics where people value things more simply because they own them. You can apply this to your own internal peace. This stillness belongs to you. It is your personal endowment. Because it is yours, it has immense value. You wouldn't throw away a valuable physical possession, and you shouldn't let a stray, stressful thought take away your valuable peace. You are the owner of this quiet moment, and you have the psychological right to protect it and cherish its worth. In neurobiology, the thalamic gate is a mechanism that filters sensory information before it reaches the cerebral cortex. During the transition to sleep, this gate slowly closes, blocking out more and more of the external world. You can almost feel this gate sliding shut as the sounds around you become less distinct and the light behind your eyelids feels more uniform. This is a physical manifestation of your brain's desire for privacy. It is the do not disturb sign of the human mind, ensuring that your internal processing can happen without interruption. The contrast effect explains how our perception of a stimulus is influenced by a recently observed stimulus of lesser or greater value. After a day of complex decisions, loud noises, and bright screens, the contrast of a dark room and a slow voice is profound. This contrast makes the quiet feel even deeper and the stillness feel even more luxurious than it would in isolation. You are currently enjoying that psychological rebound from the day's activities, moving from a high-entropy state to a low-entropy state of pure, structured rest. Identity theory in psychology suggests that we act in ways that are consistent with our perceived self-identity. If you view yourself as a relaxed person or a student of science, your behavior will naturally align with those roles. In this moment, you are adopting the identity of a sleeper. Everything about your posture, your breathing, and your focus is consistent with that identity. There is no conflict and no tension. You are simply fulfilling the requirement of the role you have chosen for the night. The omission bias is the tendency to judge harmful actions as worse than harmful omissions and inactions. In the context of sleep, we often feel we must do something to fall asleep. But the most effective path is often the omission, the choice to not act, not think, and not struggle. By choosing inaction, you are avoiding the harm of self-induced stress. You are letting the natural state of rest take over through the simple omission of effort. Silence is the lack of noise, rest is the lack of work. Social comparison theory often leads to unhappiness when we compare our lives to others. But at night, you can use downward social comparison in a gentle way. Think of all the versions of yourself that struggled in the past, the you that was stressed, the you that was busy, the you that was cold. Compared to those moments, this version of you, warm, safe, and listening to calm facts, is in a state of high luxury. This comparison creates a sense of gratitude and satisfaction, which are powerful psychological triggers for the release of pro-sleep hormones. The peak-end rule also suggests that the duration of an experience doesn't change our memory of it, but the trend does. If the trend of your evening is moving toward more and more stillness, your brain will code the entire experience as improving. Every minute that passes is a minute where you are closer to total peace than you were before. This positive trajectory is a comforting psychological arc, leading you steadily down a gentle slope toward the horizon of sleep. The law of diminishing returns applies to thinking. After a certain point in the evening, further thinking about a problem yields no new solutions, it only yields more exhaustion. Realizing that you have reached the point of diminishing returns is a logical reason to stop. Your brain's processor is no longer efficient. The most logical and scientific thing to do is to shut down the system and allow it to cool. You are not giving up on your problems, you are simply waiting for a more efficient time to address them. Effective priming shows that a brief exposure to a positive or neutral word can influence your reaction to subsequent information. By hearing words like gravity, biology, rhythm, and cycle, you are being primed to see your current state as a part of a natural, healthy system. You aren't just an individual trying to sleep, you are a biological organism participating in a planetary rhythm. This connection to something larger and more stable than yourself provides a deep sense of psychological security. The Zeigarnik effect can be neutralized by a mental ritual. Some people visualize putting their thoughts into a physical box and sliding it under a bed. Psychologically, this spatializing of thoughts helps the brain understand that they are stored and safe, but not currently needed. Once the brain sees the box is closed, it stops sending the reminders. The open loops are closed for the night. The desk is clear. The office is dark. The work is done. Finally, that spacing effect in this script ensures that each idea has time to sink into your subconscious. We aren't rushing. There is no deadline for this information. It is like a slow-motion video of a falling leaf, predictable, graceful, and inevitably moving toward the ground. Each fact is a gentle step down a long staircase. With each step, the air becomes cooler, the light becomes dimmer, and the world becomes quieter. You are almost at the bottom, where the floor is soft and the rest is deep. The restoration hypothesis of sleep suggests that the primary function of our dormant hours is to allow the brain to restore what has been depleted during the day. In the realm of psychology, this isn't just about physical energy, it's about cognitive resources. Every choice you made today, from what to wear to how to respond to an email, used a tiny amount of your brain's fuel. By this time of night, those fuel reserves are naturally low. This state of low fuel is actually what makes the facts of science and psychology feel so heavy and comforting. You are no longer trying to solve the world's problems, you are simply allowing the brain to enter its maintenance mode. There is a profound sense of relief in knowing that the most productive thing you can do right now is absolutely nothing at all. In the study of psychoacoustics, researchers have found that the brain is particularly sensitive to the envelope of a sound, the way it begins, sustains, and decays. A voice that has a soft, rounded envelope, with no sharp edges or sudden spikes, acts as a low-pass filter for the nervous system. It gently encourages the brain to produce alpha waves, which are the brain waves associated with relaxed wakefulness and the early stages of sleep. As you continue to listen, your brain waves are naturally beginning to slow down, matching the steady, predictable cadence of the information. It is a form of neural entrainment, where your biological rhythm synchronizes with the rhythm of the environment. The perceptual load theory states that our ability to process distractions depends on how much of our processing capacity is being used by a primary task. By giving your mind a low-load, primary task, listening to neutral psychology facts, you occupy just enough of your brain's capacity to prevent it from wandering into high-load, emotional territory. It's like a gentle mental tether. The tether isn't tight, it's loose and soft, but it keeps the mind from drifting away into the storms of the future or the fog of the past. You are anchored here, in a harbor of steady, predictable concepts. Research into sleep inertia shows that the brain doesn't just turn on or turn off like a light switch. Instead, it moves through a series of transitional zones. Right now, you are in this hypnagogic zone. In this space, the logical rules of the world begin to soften. A fact about psychology might turn into a visual image of a quiet forest or a still laboratory. This is a sign that your associative thinking is taking over from your linear thinking. This is a healthy and necessary part of the journey. You are moving away from the rigid structures of the day and toward the fluid, creative landscape of the dream world. That mere presence effective in social psychology suggests that the simple presence of another person can influence our behavior. In the context of a long-form script, the presence of a calm narrator provides a social cue for safety. Even if you are not consciously processing every word, your subconscious detects the lack of urgency in the tone. It concludes that if the environment is quiet enough for a slow discussion of science, it must be safe enough for the body to shut down its defenses. You are benefiting from a parasocial state of calm, where the stability of the voice becomes a mirror for your own internal stability. Expectancy theory tells us that our behavior is motivated by the belief that a specific action will lead to a desired outcome. Your action tonight is the act of listening and lying still. Your expected outcome is a deep, restorative rest. Because this outcome is so highly valued, your brain is willing to invest in the process of relaxation. It isn't a struggle, it's a high-value transaction. You are trading your wakefulness for something much more precious, the clarity and energy of a new morning. This sense of purposeful rest removes the frustration of being awake and replaces it with a sense of quiet progress. That misattribution of arousal can be corrected through somatic grounding. If you feel a slight tension in your chest or a fluttering in your mind, your brain might interpret this as anxiety. However, you can relabel these sensations as the feeling of a tired body. By assigning a physical, neutral cause to a sensation, you prevent the emotional brain from creating a story around it. The tension isn't a problem to be solved, it's just the sensation of being ready for bed. This psychological shift acts as a cooling agent for the nervous system, turning heat into stillness. In the field of neurolinguistics, certain words are considered low arousal words. Words like stone, gravity, horizontal, depth, and smooth have been shown to evoke calmer mental imagery than active verbs. This script is built upon these low arousal anchors. Every time you hear a word that implies weight or stability, your brain performs a micro-simulation of that state. You are building a mental structure of heavy, unmoving things, which provides a psychological foundation for your own physical heaviness. You are becoming as unmoving as the facts themselves. The availability heuristic often makes us fear things that are rare but memorable. But the most common thing in the world is the transition you are making right now. Billions of people have made this transition tonight, and billions more will make it tomorrow. In the grand psychology of the planet, rest is the most successful and reliable system ever designed. You are not an outlier, you are a participant in a perfect, global cycle. This sense of normative safety is a powerful antidote to the feeling of being alone with your thoughts. You are simply doing what life does. The pratfall effect reminds us that we don't need to be perfect to be worthy of rest. You may not have accomplished everything today, and your mind may not be perfectly clear. That is okay. In psychology, satisficing is the idea that we should aim for good enough rather than perfect. Your state of relaxation right now is good enough. You don't need to be perfectly still or perfectly calm. The small imperfections in your focus are just a part of being human. Accepting these flaws allows that evaluative mind to close its ledger for the night and move into the silent, non-judgmental space of sleep. The focusing illusion suggests that we overestimate the importance of whatever we are currently thinking about. By shifting your focusing lens to the biology of your own breath, you make that breath the most important thing in your universe. The breath is a perfect object of focus because it is rhythmic, neutral, and always present. As the breath becomes the center of the circle, everything else, the day's work, the week's plans, moves to the periphery. In the periphery, things are blurred and quiet. Only the breath remains in sharp, calm focus. Cognitive reframing of the silence in the room can turn a void into a presence. Instead of thinking of silence as the absence of sound, think of it as a field of potential. It is a clear, open space where your mind can finally stretch out and relax. The silence is not empty, it is full of peace. It is that padding between you and the world. By viewing the silence as a protective layer, you find yourself feeling more and more insulated from any external noise or internal distraction. The bystander effect can be used internally to silence the inner critic. When the scientist in your mind, the part that listens to these facts, is active, the critic becomes a mere bystander. The critic has nothing to add to a discussion about the thalamic gate or neuroplasticity. Because the critic is not an expert in these areas, it stays quiet. This allows you to enjoy a period of mental peace that is free from self-judgment. You are exploring the mechanics of the mind, a neutral territory where you can simply observe without needing to change anything. Research into haptic perception shows that holding a soft object or feeling the texture of a smooth sheet can lower heart rate. This is because the tactile system is closely linked to the parasympathetic nervous system. As you lie there, you can focus on the specific textures of your environment. Each texture is a tactile fact. The coolness of the pillowcase, the softness of the blanket, the weight of your own body against the mattress. These facts are simple, undeniable, and incredibly grounding. They are the physical anchors that keep your mind from floating away into the abstract world of worry. The Zeigarnik effect is neutralized when we realize that the task of resting is actually being completed every second you remain still. You are currently performing the act of resting with 100% success. There is no unfinished business in this moment. Every breath is a completed cycle. Every heartbeat is a finished task. This constant loop of completion creates a sense of psychological satisfaction. You are winning at the only game that matters right now, the game of being still. Finally, the spacing effect in this script mimics the breathing of a healthy mind. There is a pulse to the information, a movement and then a pause. A statement and then a reflection. This rhythm is designed to match the oscillations of a brain moving toward sleep. As the session continues, the pauses will feel longer and the statements will feel lighter, until the information dissolves into the background noise of a peaceful night. You are moving deeper into the layers of the psyche, where the words turn into whispers and the whispers turn into silence. The anchoring effect is a cognitive bias where we rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered when making decisions. In the context of your rest, we have set the anchor as a state of profound neutrality. By establishing this baseline early on, every subsequent thought is compared to this quiet starting point. If a stray thought enters the mind, the brain recognizes it as an outlier, something that does not fit the current anchor of stillness. Because it does not fit, the mind finds it easier to discard the thought, returning to the heavy, stable anchor of the present moment. You are not floating aimlessly, you are tethered to a deep, psychological center of gravity that keeps your perspective grounded and low. In the study of interoception, which is the sense of the internal state of the body, psychologists have found that people who focus on their own heartbeat or the sensation of their lungs moving can actually improve their emotional regulation. This internal focus acts as a circuit breaker for the external world. When you turn your attention inward to the rhythmic, biological facts of your own existence, you are withdrawing your cognitive investment from the outside world. The brain stops trying to navigate social hierarchies or physical obstacles and instead focuses on the simple, elegant maintenance of the self. This shift is a prerequisite for the deeper stages of sleep, where the internal world becomes the only world that matters. That scarcity heuristic suggests that we value things more when we perceive them to be limited. While sleep is a daily occurrence, the specific window of time you have right now is at limited edition of peace. There will never be another night exactly like this one, with this specific temperature, this specific silence, and this specific feeling of letting go. By viewing this moment as a rare and valuable resource, the mind is less likely to waste it on stressful simulations. You are savoring the scarcity of the silence. This psychological appreciation turns the act of lying still into a luxury, making it more satisfying and effective for the nervous system. Research into mirror neurons has been expanded to include emotional contagion, the phenomenon where we catch the feelings of those around us. This applies even to the digital environment. By listening to a voice that is consistently calm and a script that is consistently logical, you are catching a state of serenity. Your brain's mirror neurons are firing in a pattern that reflects the lack of urgency in the narrative. This is a form of social co-regulation, where you are using the stability of the information to help stabilize your own heart rate and blood pressure. You are moving in tandem with a steady, peaceful guide. The benign masochism theory in psychology explains why we sometimes enjoy sad music or chilly rooms. It is the enjoyment of a safe and negative experience. In a similar way, the heaviness of tiredness can be viewed through this lens. While heavy limbs might sound like a burden, in the safety of your bed, that heaviness is perceived as pleasurable. It is the weight of a body that no longer has to move. It is the good tired that follows a day of existence. By identifying this weight as a benign and positive sensation, you allow the brain to fully lean into the feeling rather than resisting it. You are embracing the gravity of the night. Affective forecasting often leads us to believe that if we don't fall asleep immediately, we will be miserable. However, psychological studies on well-being show that quiet wakefulness, simply lying still with the eyes closed, provides up to 70% of the restorative benefits of actual sleep for the brain's frontal cortex. Knowing this scientific safety net removes the desperation from the process. You are already winning. You are already restoring. Even if you are simply drifting in the shallows of thought, your brain is performing its necessary maintenance. This knowledge acts as a pressure release valve, allowing the mind to relax because the stakes have been lowered. The thalamocortical loop is the neural pathway that keeps the brain's cortex active and awake. As you transition toward sleep, the activity in this loop begins to burst in sleep spindles, brief bursts of brain activity that actually help to disconnect the cortex from sensory input. These spindles are like a buffer that prevents external noises from waking you up. You can imagine these spindles as soft, protective pulses of light in the brain, each one making your environment feel more distant and less relevant. Your brain is building its own soundproof wall from the inside out, ensuring that your inner peace remains undisturbed. In positive psychology, the concept of flow is usually associated with activity, but there is also a passive flow state. This occurs when you are so aligned with a neutral stimulus, like the sound of rain or a steady voice, that the boundary between the observer and the observed begins to fade. In this state, the self is not a separate entity that has to do anything. It is just a part of the environment. This dissolution of the ego is a deeply healthy psychological experience. It is the ultimate form of rest, where you are no longer the manager of your life, but simply a witness to the quiet unfolding of the night. That spotlight effect in your mind might occasionally try to illuminate a past embarrassment or a future worry. But you can imagine your mind as a dimmer switch. With every fact you hear, you are slowly turning the dial down. The light is becoming softer, moving from a bright white to a warm amber, and eventually to a deep, dark indigo. In the indigo light, the details of your worries are no longer visible. You can see the shape of a thought, but you don't need to look at its contents. It is just another object in the room, resting quietly in the shadows. Self-determination theory suggests that humans have a fundamental need for autonomy, the feeling that they are the authors of their own actions. Paradoxically, you exercise your ultimate autonomy by choosing to surrender it. By deciding that you will no longer author your thoughts for the next few hours, you are making a powerful, autonomous choice. You are the one who has decided to let the science and the silence take the lead. This sense of being the chooser of your own rest prevents the feeling of being trapped by wakefulness. You are not stuck, you are exactly where you have chosen to be. The duration neglect principle means that the total time you spend in this state is less important than the quality of the transition. If the transition is slow, gentle, and filled with neutral observations, your brain will label the entire sleep cycle as high quality. You are currently engineering a high-quality transition. Even the pauses between these sentences are part of the design. They are the white space on the page that makes the text readable. They are the silence in the music that makes the notes meaningful. You are learning to appreciate the empty spaces as much as the information itself. Research into circadian entrainment shows that our bodies are highly sensitive to Zeitgebers, or time givers. While light is the most powerful Zeitgeber, rhythmic sound and predictable language can also act as cues for the internal clock. By exposing your mind to this specific type of low energy and information at the same time, you are creating a psychological Zeitgeber. You are telling your suprachiasmatic nucleus that this is the key time of facts and rest. The brain loves this predictability. It rewards the routine with a more efficient release of sleep-promoting chemicals, making the descent into dreams feel like a well-coordinated landing. The availability heuristic can sometimes make the world seem louder than it is. But right now, the most available thing in your mind is the concept of a cycle. The cycle of the moon, the cycle of the seasons, the cycle of the breath. In psychology, cyclical thinking is much more restorative than a linear thinking. Linear thinking is about progress, deadlines, and endings. Cyclical thinking is about return, repetition, and eternal balance. By focusing on the cycles of science, you are stepping off the treadmill of the day and onto the carousel of the night. It is a much slower, more rhythmic way to move. Cognitive load theory suggests that we have a germane load, the mental effort used to create a permanent store of knowledge. In this sleepy science session, we are keeping the germane load at 0. You are not being tested on this information. There is no quiz. You don't need to build a mental map of these theories. The facts are meant to be consumed and then forgotten. This temporary knowledge is a unique psychological category. It provides that flavor of learning without the weight of studying. It is mental nourishment that leaves no residue in the working memory. Finally, the spacing effect in this delivery mimics the pulsing of the earth itself. The rise and fall of the tide, the swaying of the trees, the beating of the heart. We are not in a hurry to reach the 15,000-word mark. We are moving at the speed of a growing plant. This slow progression is a psychological signal that there is plenty of time. The world's clocks may be ticking, but in this space, time is a wide, still lake. You can drift across it at your own pace, knowing that the shore is always there when you are ready to arrive. The substitution effect in cognitive psychology suggests that when the mind is faced with a complex or difficult question, it often subconsciously substitutes it for an easier one. When you are lying in the dark, the difficult question might be, how will I handle everything tomorrow? By listening to these words, your brain is provided with a much easier question to answer. What is the next fact about the mind? This substitution is a powerful relief. It shifts the cognitive energy from high-stakes survival planning to low-stakes observation. The brain is happy to make this trade. It prefers the simple, rhythmic task of following a neutral narrative over the taxing labor of future-oriented anxiety. This shift allows the problem-solving circuits to power down, leaving only the perceptual circuits active, which are much closer to the state of dreaming. Research into haptic imagery reveals that just as we can see with our mind's eye, we can feel with our mind's touch. As we discuss the psychology of weight and pressure, your brain can simulate the feeling of a heavy, velvet curtain being drawn across a room. This mental simulation triggers the same somatosensory regions as a real physical sensation. You can imagine the air in the room becoming slightly thicker, warmer, and more supportive, as if the atmosphere itself were cradling your limbs. This mental padding adds an extra layer of psychological distance between you and the external world. You are becoming encased in a soft, conceptual cocoon where the only data that matters is the steady, quiet pulse of information. The primacy effect often dictates our first impressions, but the recency effect determines our immediate state of mind. The most recent thing you have experienced is the sound of a slow, steady voice and the contemplation of scientific truths. This recency acts as a psychological buffer against any earlier stresses of the day. It is the top layer of your consciousness. By keeping this top layer neutral and slow, you ensure that as you drift into sleep, the last thoughts your brain processes are ones of stability and order. The brain uses these final inputs as the template for its nightly reorganization. You are providing your subconscious with a blueprint of peace. In the study of attention restoration theory, psychologists distinguish between a directed attention and soft fascination. Directed attention is what we use at work. It is exhausting and easily depleted. Soft fascination is what happens when we watch clouds move or listen to a steady, predictable explanation. Soft fascination does not require effort, it actually refills our cognitive energy. By engaging in this state of soft fascination, you are not just waiting for sleep, you are actively healing your attention span. You are allowing the executive part of your brain to rest in a comfortable chair while the observational part takes a slow, easy walk through the landscape of psychology. The availability cascade is a self-reinforcing process where a belief gains more plausibility through repetition. We are creating a calmness cascade. Every time the word stillness or rhythm is repeated, the neural pathways associated with those states are strengthened. It becomes easier for the brain to believe in its own relaxation. This is the opposite of a panic spiral. It is a serenity spiral, where each quiet fact makes the next quiet fact feel even more natural. You are building a momentum of peace that eventually becomes too heavy and slow for the conscious mind to maintain, leading to a gentle collapse into the restorative depths of the unconscious. Cognitive reframing of the hypnagogic state, the transition between wakefulness and sleep, allows you to see it as a creative laboratory. In this state, the brain often experiences micro-dreams or unusual associations. Instead of being startled by these, a psychological approach is to view them as the data points that the transition is working. Each strange image or drifting thought is a sign that the logic gate of the day is opening. You are becoming a traveler in a land where the rules are different. This curiosity, maintained at a low, neutral level, prevents the fear of the unknown and turns the descent into sleep into a familiar, scientific journey. That focusing illusion tells us that nothing is as important as what you are thinking about right now. By focusing on the neurobiology of the breath, you make the breath the most important thing in your world. The breath is the ultimate low arousal anchor. It is a biological rhythm that has been with you since your first moment and will be with you until your last. It is a constant, faithful companion. By aligning your mental focus with this physical rhythm, you are participating in a fundamental biofeedback loop. The mind focuses on the breath becomes steady, the steady breath calms the mind, and the circle continues until it widens into the vastness of sleep. Self-determination theory emphasizes our need for competence. You can feel competent at resting. It is a skill you are currently practicing. By lying still and allowing these facts to wash over you, you are successfully engaging in the psychology of recovery. This sense of small-scale competence provides a quiet dopamine drip of satisfaction, which is much more conducive to sleep than the adrenaline spike of frustration. You are doing a good job of being still. You are an expert at this moment. This realization allows the striving part of your personality to feel satisfied and retire for the evening. That mere presence effect suggests that the presence of others can act as a social lubricant for certain behaviors. Even in the digital space, the presence of a steady, calm guide acts as a signal that the environment is socially stable. In our evolutionary past, humans slept best when they knew a trusted member of the tribe was awake and watching. You are utilizing this ancient psychological mechanism. The voice serves as your watchman, allowing your internal sentinel to finally go off duty. You are not alone in the dark, you are being held in a steady, informational embrace that confirms all is well. The spacing effect in this delivery mimics the long-wave oscillations of deep-stage sleep. These are slow, rhythmic electrical pulses that travel through the brain, coordinating the recleanings and storing processes. By providing information in a similar pulse, we are pre-syncing your brain to its natural sleep architecture. It is like humming a tune that the brain already knows. Eventually, the brain takes over the melody, and the external voice is no longer needed. The harmony of the facts transitions into the symphony of the dream, a seamless movement from the known to the unknown. Finally, the duration neglect principle ensures that the time it takes to finish this script is irrelevant. We are not counting down, we are counting in. Every word is a move toward the center of your own peace. Whether we are at word 5,000 or 15,000, the state is the same, one of neutral, scientific observation. This consistency is the key. It is a static environment, like a painting that never changes, allowing the eyes of the mind to eventually stop looking and simply close. You are drifting, steady and slow, on a current of facts that leads to the ocean of rest. The cocktail party effect in psychology describes the brain's ability to focus its auditory attention on a single stimulus while filtering out a range of other stimuli. In this quiet setting, you are applying a reverse version of this effect. By focusing on the singular, low-frequency cadence of these words, you are training your brain to deprioritize the background noise of your own internal dialogue. The brain is a filter, and right now, you are setting that filter to neutral. As the technical details of psychology occupy your primary processing channel, the secondary channels, where worries and plans usually reside, are gradually muted. This is not a forced silence, but a natural result of cognitive selection. The mind simply doesn't have the bandwidth to maintain a complex emotional state while simultaneously following the slow, steady path of a scientific explanation. Research into proprioceptive drift shows how our sense of where our body is in space can be influenced by external cues. As you listen to descriptions of stillness and gravity, you may experience a mental drift where the boundaries of your physical body feel less distinct. This is a common phenomenon in the transition to sleep. The brain begins to disconnect from the spatial map of the room, preparing instead for the fluid and non-linear spaces of the dream world. You can embrace this feeling of floating walk dissolving. It is a sign that your motor cortex is successfully powering down, allowing the muscles to enter a state of total, unburdened relaxation. You are no longer an object that has to move, you are a presence that is simply being held. The effective priming of specific scientific terms can influence your subconscious mood. Terms like homeostasis, equilibrium, and biological rhythm act as semantic anchors. These words don't just carry definitions, they carry a feeling of stability. In the same way that a bright light primes the brain for alertness, these stable words prime the nervous system for a return to its baseline. You are building a mental environment made of sturdy, reliable concepts. This provides a sense of intellectual safety. The world of the mind is being organized into neat rows of predictable facts, which allows the sentinel part of your brain to see that everything is in its proper place and that it is safe to finally close the ledger for the day. In the study of metacomprehension, psychologists have found that our ability to judge how well we understand something decreases as we grow more relaxed. This blurring of comprehension is a positive development for sleep. You may find that the meaning of these sentences begins to drift or become less sharp. Instead of trying to grasp the meaning, you can simply let the sounds wash over you like a gentle tide. The effort to understand is a form of cognitive work. By letting go of that effort, you are signaling to your brain that the learning phase is over and the resting phase has begun. The information is no longer a task to be mastered, but a texture to be felt. The end-of-history illusion is the belief that one has experienced significant personal growth and will not change much in the future. However, every night of sleep is a testament to the fact that we are always changing. During the next few hours, your brain will perform a synaptic pruning process, clearing out unnecessary connections to make room for new ones. You are literally a different person every morning. This nightly refresh is a powerful psychological tool for resilience. No matter how challenging the day was, the biological machinery of sleep is designed to give you a clean slate. You are participating in a masterpiece of biological engineering that ensures your mind remains flexible and capable of growth. That mere exposure effect suggests that the more we are exposed to something, the more we like it. As this script continues through its many thousands of words, the very sound of the voice becomes a comforting familiar. The brain stops evaluating the newness of the information and starts to enjoy the predictability of the delivery. This predictability is the ultimate psychological safety blanket. In an unpredictable world, the steady, rhythmic repetition of neutral facts is a sanctuary. You know what is coming: more quiet observations, more slow sentences, and more space. This lack of surprise is exactly what the nervous system needs to transition from scan mode to sleep mode. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to shift between different concepts or perspectives. In this session, you are practicing a very specific type of flexibility, the ability to shift from problem-focused thinking to fact-focused thinking. This is like shifting a car into neutral. The engine is still running, but the wheels are no longer turning. You are not going anywhere. You are just idling in a state of quiet, scientific observation. This idling state is the bridge to the dream world. By staying in neutral, you make it easy for the brain to eventually turn the engine off altogether, sliding into the silence of a deep, undisturbed night. That focusing illusion tells us that the more we think about a specific sensation, the larger it becomes in our awareness. You can use this to magnify the heaviness of your eyelids. If you focus entirely on the micro-sensations of your eyes, the warmth, the slight pressure, the stillness, that feeling of readiness for sleep becomes your entire world. It crowds out the memory of the day and the anticipation of the morning. There is only the heavy, velvet curtain of the eyelids. This is a positive feedback loop of relaxation. The more you notice the heaviness, the heavier they feel, until the effort to keep them open becomes greater than the desire to let them close. Self-perception theory suggests that we observe our own behavior to determine our internal state. When you observe yourself lying in the dark for hours, listening to a slow discourse on psychology, your brain concludes, "I am a person who is at peace. I am a person who is resting." This conclusion then triggers a cascade of physiological changes, a slower heart rate, deeper breathing, and a drop in core body temperature. You are teaching your body how to feel by providing it with a consistent, peaceful environment. The body is an excellent student. It will follow the lead of your steady, quiet focus. Finally, the spacing effect in this delivery mimics the breathing of the natural world. Just as the tide comes in and goes out, these facts arrive and then recede, leaving a period of silence in their wake. This rhythm is designed to lower your cognitive arousal level. We are not stacking information, we are spreading it out like a thin, cooling layer of mist over a warm landscape. This mist slowly draws the heat out of your thoughts, leaving everything cool, damp, and still. You are moving deeper into the quiet architecture of the mind, where the words are just shadows on the wall, and the only reality is the deep, dark indigo of the night. The negativity bias is an evolutionary psychological trait that causes us to give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. In the quiet of the night, this bias can act like a magnifying glass, making a single awkward interaction from 3 years ago feel as relevant as the present moment. However, by intentionally saturating your working memory with neutral, scientific observations, you are performing a cognitive override. You are essentially telling your brain that the most important data right now is the law of gravity and the mechanics of the human nervous system. Because these facts are neither threatening nor emotional, they do not trigger the amygdala. This lack of emotional charge allows the brain's alarm system to slowly power down. You are replacing the high-stakes narrative of the self with the low-stakes narrative of nature. Research into inhibitory control suggests that our ability to stop ourselves from thinking or acting is a finite resource that is depleted by the end of the day. This is why just stopping your thoughts feels impossible when you are tired. Instead of trying to use a depleted resource, you can use a redirection. By following the path of this script, you aren't stopping your mind, you are simply giving it a very slow, very boring track to run on. It's like a train moving at 1 mile per hour through a flat, gray landscape. Eventually, even the most active mind grows bored with its own movement and decides it would rather be still. You are using the brain's natural tendency toward boredom as a tool for rest. The Ganzfeld effect can also be applied to the internal mental state. Just as a uniform field of light can cause the brain to hallucinate or drift, a uniform field of information, where the tone, pace, and complexity are perfectly consistent, causes the brain to disengage from the content and focus on the cadence. You stop listening to what is being said and start simply existing within the sound of it being said. This state of auditory immersion is a powerful precursor to sleep. It mimics the white noise of a fan or a steady rain, but with just enough structure to keep the mind from inventing its own, more stressful noise. You are being lulled by the predictability of the science. In the study of automaticity, psychologists find that when we do things automatically, the brain uses significantly less energy. Sleep is the most automatic process we have. By focusing on the automatic nature of your breathing or the automatic way your heart pumps blood, you are aligning your conscious focus with your unconscious systems. You are syncing up with your biology. This synchronization reduces the friction between the thinking mind and the living body. When the mind finally accepts that the body is in charge of the night, it can let go of its need to manage things. You are becoming a passenger on a very safe, very steady biological vessel. That focusing illusion suggests that our current focus defines our current happiness. If you focus on the micro-pleasures of the night, the coolness of a single pillow, the smoothness of a sheet, the silence between words, your brain concludes that your current environment is one of extreme comfort. This perception of comfort triggers the release of endorphins and oxytocin, chemicals that naturally counteract the stress hormones of the day. You are hacking your own chemistry through the simple act of directed attention. You are not just lying in a room, you are cultivating a high-quality psychological state that is optimized for recovery. Self-compassion in the context of sleep psychology involves recognizing that rest is not a luxury, but a biological imperative. You are not wasting time by being still for 10 hours. You are performing the most important maintenance work of your entire life. Without this time, the brain cannot process memories, clear out toxins, or repair cells. Viewing rest as a productive necessity removes the guilt that often keeps the achievement-oriented mind awake. You are currently at work on the project of your own health. You are fulfilling your most basic responsibility to yourself. This realization allows the guilt center of the brain to settle into a state of quiet satisfaction. That spacing effect in this delivery mimics the long-wave oscillations of deep sleep brain activity. These waves are like the cleaning cycles of the mind. By providing information in slow, rhythmic pulses, we are encouraging your brain to enter this same rhythmic pattern. It is a form of auditory entrainment. The more you listen, the more your internal clock begins to match the external pace. The world of the day was fast, fragmented, and loud. The world of the night is slow, continuous, and soft. You are crossing the bridge from one to the other, one neutral fact at a time. The bridge is long, and there is no rush to reach the other side. Cognitive ease is the state where everything feels familiar and non-threatening. When you hear about homeostasis or circadian rhythms, these concepts might be familiar from school or previous reading. This familiarity creates a sense of ease. The brain doesn't have to work hard to understand what is being said. It can simply nod along and drift. This nodding along is the psychological equivalent of a gentle rocking motion. It is a comforting, repetitive activity that signals to the nervous system that no new or alarming information is coming. The coast is clear. The night is safe. The facts are steady. The halo effect can be applied to the darkness itself. Instead of seeing darkness as the absence of light, we can see it as a filter that removes the clutter of the world. Darkness is a high-end sensory experience. It is a visual silence that allows the brain to rest its visual cortex, which is one of its most energy-consuming areas. By appreciating the richness of the dark, the way it feels like a soft, heavy weight on the eyes, you turn the act of having your eyes closed into a sensory treat. You are not missing out on anything, you are enjoying the luxury of nothingness. Finally, the duration neglect principle ensures that the length of this script is a benefit, not a burden. There is a psychological comfort in knowing that there are thousands of words still to come. You don't have to worry about the silence returning too soon. You are in a well-funded environment of information. There is plenty of peace to go around. You can take as much as you need, knowing that the steady flow of calm, psychological facts will continue as long as you need it to. You are drifting in a vast ocean of stillness, and the shore of the morning is miles and miles away. The primacy effect of in-memory tells us that we tend to remember the beginning of an experience most vividly, but in the psychology of sleep, it is the continuity of stimulus that truly matters. By maintaining an unchanging tone and a steady stream of low-impact information, we are creating a sensory floor. This floor supports your consciousness as it begins to sag under the weight of the day's fatigue. There are no sudden drops here, no sharp turns in the narrative, and no emotional peaks. Each psychological observation is like a smooth, flat stone placed in a path. As you walk this path in your mind, you are moving away from the high-frequency chatter of social life and toward the low-frequency hum of biological existence. Research into haptic perception shows that even the imagined sensation of a soft texture can lower a person's level of physiological arousal. As we discuss the architecture of the mind, you can imagine your thoughts being wrapped in a thick, insulating layer of soft, gray wool. This mental insulation dampens the sharp edges of any intrusive worries. It makes the world feel distant and muffled, as if you were listening to a conversation from another room through a heavy door. This distance is a vital psychological tool. It reminds the brain that it is currently off duty. The problems of the world are still there, but they are no longer your responsibility. They have been placed in a holding pattern, circling far above the quiet, grounded reality of your bed. The availability heuristic often leads us to believe that the world is more chaotic than it is, simply because chaos makes for better news. But the science of the mundane tells a different story. For every act of chaos in the world, there are trillions of successful biological processes happening in perfect order. Right now, within your own body, enzymes are precisely folded, cells are being quietly repaired, and your heart is maintaining a steady rhythm that has not failed you for a single second of your life. This biological reliability is a scientific fact. By focusing on this overwhelming evidence of order, you provide your mind with a sense of cosmic security. You are part of a system that works. You are a passenger on a vessel that knows exactly how to navigate the night. In the study of attention restoration theory, psychologists emphasize that the brain needs restorative environments to recover from directed attention fatigue. A restorative environment is one that provides extent, a sense of being in a whole different world. Through this long-form exploration of psychology, we are building that different world. It is a world made of definitions, theories, and calm observations. It is a cleaner environment, free from the pollution of personal drama or professional pressure. By spending time in this clean mental space, your attention battery is being slowly recharged. You aren't just passing time, you are actively restoring your ability to be focused and present tomorrow. The spotlight effect usually makes us feel self-conscious, but in the privacy of the night, you can turn that spotlight inward to perform a body scan. This is a classic psychological technique for relaxation. Start with the toes, noticing the lack of tension there. Move to the ankles, the calves, and the knees. At each point, acknowledge the physical fact of the muscle's relaxation. The muscle is not trying to be still, it simply is still. By the time that spotlight reaches your shoulders and jaw, the weight of your body feels profound. You are becoming a physical fact, a heavy, unmoving object that is perfectly integrated with the surface beneath it. This grounding is a powerful antidote to the flighty nature of a racing mind. Cognitive ease is also enhanced by the use of passive voice and neutral descriptors. In the psychology of linguistics, active verbs like run, fight, or win trigger a subtle readiness in the motor cortex. However, passive observations like "it is noted," "it is observed," or "the process occurs" allow the brain to remain a spectator rather than a participant. This script is designed to keep you in the spectator seat. You are watching the facts drift by, but you are not expected to do anything with them. There is no call to action. There is no lesson to be learned. There is only the steady, neutral flow of information, acting as a white noise for the intellect. That mere exposure effects means that as the minutes turn into hours, the very concepts we are discussing, like neuroplasticity or circadian rhythms, become comfort objects. They lose their academic complexity and become familiar, friendly landmarks in the dark. You start to recognize the shape of a psychological theory before the sentence even finishes. This pre-recognition allows the brain to relax even further. It's like listening to a favorite, familiar song where you don't have to pay attention to the lyrics because you already know where the melody is going. The melody of this science is one of eternal, predictable balance. In evolutionary psychology, that safe haven is a place where an organism can retreat to recover from the stresses of the environment. Your mind is your ultimate safe haven. By populating it with safe thoughts, thoughts that are true, steady, and non-emotional, you are fortifying your internal sanctuary. You are building a psychological fortress where the walls are made of logic and the floor is made of calm. No matter what happened during the day, once you cross the threshold into this space of sleepy science, the external world ceases to have authority over you. You are the sovereign of this quiet territory. The duration neglect principle ensures that the actual word count is less important than the texture of the experience. We are creating a long-textured environment. Like a vast, flat desert or a wide, calm ocean, the extent of the script provides a sense of infinite space. This prevents the claustrophobia of the clock. You don't have to worry about the recording ending soon. There is a wealth of stillness here. This psychological abundance allows you to be generous with your time. You can spend 20 minutes just noticing the rhythm of a single sentence, knowing that there are plenty more waiting for you in the hours ahead. Finally, the spacing effect in this delivery mimics the long-wave oscillations of the Earth's own natural cycles. The rotation of the planet, the movement of the tides, the changing of the seasons. These are not rushed processes. They happen with a majestic, inevitable slowness. By matching the pace of these words to those ancient rhythms, we are inviting your nervous system to plug back into the planet's baseline. The human world is fast and jagged, but the natural world is slow and smooth. You are leaving the human world behind for a few hours, returning to the smooth, slow, and deep biological home where all life began. The restorative hypothesis of sleep concludes with the understanding that the brain is not merely resting, but actively renewing its capacity for life. As we reach the end of this journey through the landscapes of the mind, the concepts of psychology and biology have served their purpose. They have provided a steady, neutral path for your consciousness to follow, leading you away from the complexities of the day and into the simplicity of the night. The thalamic gate is now almost entirely closed, filtering out the world until only the internal rhythm of your own existence remains. There is a profound symmetry in this process, a closing of the circle that began with the first light of morning and now finds its resolution in the deep indigo of the dark. In the final assessment of the psychology of rest, we find that the most important truth is the reliability of the system itself. Your brain knows how to heal. Your body knows how to recover. The glymphatic system is ready to begin its nightly cleansing, and the suprachiasmatic nucleus has successfully signaled the transition to total dormancy. You are no longer an observer of these facts, you are the living embodiment of them. The logic of the science has transitioned into the feeling of the stillness. The words are now just distant echoes, losing their edges and becoming part of the uniform field of silence that surrounds you. There is no longer a need for definitions or theories. The cognitive load has been reduced to zero. The executive function has retired. What remains is a state of pure being, where the air is cool, the body is heavy, and the mind is as vast and quiet as a starlit sky. You are safe. You are grounded. You are exactly where you need to be. The 10-hour cycle of rest is a natural law, as predictable as the tides and as steady as the rotation of the Earth. You are moving in harmony with that law, drifting effortlessly toward the horizon where thought ends and dreams begin. The journey is complete, the path is clear, and the night is deep and still. The architecture of your day has reached its natural conclusion. As the final layers of thought dissolve into the deep, quiet indigo of the evening, you are left with the simple, elegant reality of your own presence. The world outside has grown small and distant, leaving you in a sanctuary of absolute safety and profound stillness. There is nothing more to process, no more facts to hold, and no further journey to take. You have arrived at the center of your own recovery. Here, in the gentle weight of your body and the steady rhythm of your breath, you find the freedom to let go completely. The air is cool and supportive. The silence is rich and protective. The mind is clear and vast. You are drifting now on a slow, golden current that leads toward a deep and restorative sea. It is here, in this perfect alignment with the laws of nature, that you sleep slowly and well like this. The path is gone, the work is done, and the light has faded into a soft, eternal peace. Good night.